Christine, welcome. So good to have you here. This is the Groundwork show where we cover people building ecosystems at many of the best tech companies in the world and consider G2 as part of that. And so excited to have you join us and talk a little bit about your journey and how you got here today.
Thanks, Tai. I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me on your show.
Awesome. So could you tell us a little bit about your path to partnerships and what you're doing today?
Yeah, sure. So I currently lead our Growth and Enablement organization at G2. And how we consider partnerships is it's critical to our growth strategy and how we create value for our customers. So I'll take a step back and just kind of share how I got here. It's a long journey, and many twists and turns. I think that the three constant throughout my career is most of my career has been in the B2B tech space. Most of my career has been anchored around marketing as a function for me. And then most of my career had some sort of innovation or building new, whether it's a new product, a new team, a new motion, some element of new. And I think that those three areas really drives my passion and my interest. Um, so I started from I graduated university and wanted to change the world. I was deeply involved. I'm also Canadian, by the way. So shout out to fellow Canucks. Um, I started I was in Toronto, and I got involved deeply with the local communities there around public policy and advocacy. Immigration, citizenship, social justice were all core areas in that's been a thread throughout my life, my family's life, and I knew graduating university that I would have a voice and an impact to make in the world. So I joined an organization called the uh, National Council, Chinese Canadian National Council, and we worked on this 25-year-old redress campaign for a racist immigration law on Chinese migrants into Canada. It was a long uphill battle, but through that experience, I learned about media relations. I learned about digital media. We actually created the first. I would like to consider the first digital email e-petition for a nonprofit organization in Canada. This was before any of the anti-spam laws. So there was a lot of testing, we'll say, and one way that we got attention was by setting up this petition for to redress the Chinese head tax, um, and collected signatures over a span of a long weekend, and then delivered those signatures directly to the BlackBerry email addresses of over 300 members of parliament. And BlackBerry dates how long ago this was. Um, the following week, there was a non-confidence vote that happened in Canadian federal parliament, and this topic was actually brought up as one of the um, reasons for having no confidence in the current government. That actually started an election. We started doing a ton of digital media work across the country, and essentially mobilized a whole community across the large span of geographies across Canada on this one issue, and thinking about how do we take this issue to the mainstream, getting the politicians stance on this issue, educating the public on this issue. Um, we eventually were able to actually change the course of history here. We were able to get a redress for the Chinese Canadian taxpayers. That there's only been two redress in all of Canada's history. The first was for the Japanese internment camps during World War II, and the second was for the Chinese head tax. And more even, I think there's a symbolic element of it in where once you have government in power apologizing for something that's happened in the past, there's admission that there was something wrong that was done. And that gives confidence that it won't repeat when we recognize that something went wrong and something wrong happened. Um, but then there's also the systemic impact. We created a $10 million community fund. That community fund went into education programs. So any high school, public high school in Canada, you walk into the library, you pick out a history book. There'll be a chapter in there about the Chinese migration into Canada, around about the head tax that they had to pay, about the Exclusion Act that was put in place that separated families, and all of that was done through this community fund. So what it taught me was just the importance of having a voice. And originally I was thinking about going into law, I was thinking about going into public policy, but I very quickly realized that when we combine technology and communication, there's so much more impact that I can have on this world. And that's what got me really, started my career and finding my ways through the B2B tech world. I moved in. My first corporate job was in Bell Canada, which is the largest telco in Canada. At the time, I joined a founding marketing group that was, very, very early in its days. We were building out the Bell Business Markets, which is the enterprise business offering for Bell Canada. Bell already had a really, really strong commercial, B2C market where they weren't strong, and it was creating the business solutions. And so, from that experience, I learned so much around go-to-market strategy, around product marketing, around connecting to a B2B audience, but also kind of blending the boundaries with B2C, because Bell had such a strong B2C brand already. So an example of that, we worked on the 2010 Olympic Games as a premier sponsor. Originally this was intended to be a pure B2C play, but when you look at the solutions that Bell put in place in Vancouver during the 2010 Games, every solution there was a business solution. And so just applying that to a business audience and being able to tell that story was something that I was very passionate about and felt like it made such a big difference in the company. Bell was also my first brush with people leadership. So I was leading a team of marketers, very talented, and I'm sure that a lot of people that you speak with, their first brush with going into a management role isn't exactly how they imagine it would be. I almost feel like there's that meme of like what you think you do in management, what other people think you do, what you actually do. And I think I started learning and just becoming thirsty for that tactical knowledge, and being a kind of missing the days when I was a practitioner. So another opportunity came about, and that was with LinkedIn. LinkedIn was a vendor of mine at the time. I used LinkedIn all the time for personal and as well as for my marketing work. So when an opportunity came about to join LinkedIn's marketing solutions business, that was my golden ticket. I was like, yes, this is where I'm going to get my practitioner experience. This is also where I'm going to have an opportunity to test on a global scale and not just be in Canada. So lo and behold, LinkedIn moved me to San Francisco. I actually pivoted into sales, which if you speak with any marketer, they'll tell you or they may tell you, but maybe they're just thinking about it. It's almost like you're going to the dark side. Where you're crossing this line to I remember I used to always have images of that used car salesman on The Simpsons pop up, and just this really sad image of what sales would be like. But LinkedIn is where it all changed for me. LinkedIn completely, their sales methodology, their approach to working with customers in this super consultative way where it's mutually beneficial, completely redefined what sales is for me. And as an account executive, I had so much freedom in creating, in making my role mine. So, I think I still hesitate saying things like, oh, I'm an account executive or I'm a salesperson. So I would just go and say I'm a client partner or I'm a consultant or something like that. That was more reflective of what I enjoy and how I saw it. I added value. I think what it also taught me was just discipline, understanding how to prioritize, understanding how to own a number and crush it, and then having carving out space to test and be wrong, um, and learn from those experiences. I think what it also taught me was my first brush with partnerships. Uh, you know, I, a lot of clients are natural partners in a business. I remember one client I worked with really closely, and their offering just complemented LinkedIn's offering so well. It was actually a missing piece in our business that, when we look at where we place investment, just wasn't core for our business at the time. But this partner provided that, and I started working with this partner around ways that we align our missions, ways that we can go deeper and work on product offerings that were jointly beneficial for both our businesses. So going much further and beyond just marketing. I think this is also reflective of LinkedIn's philosophy for sales. It's really anchored around customer value and thinking about their business as a whole, and solving for their business challenges and objectives, and not just the specific tactic that uh, you know that you're working on with them. So that was a really great experience. I also went back into leadership at LinkedIn, and I think most folks would agree with me that your second brush with leadership is much more successful and eye-opening than your first. So that's kind of where I ventured into. I think across my career, you'll see that for me, growth means scale. It means diversification. Um, and when an opportunity with G2 came up, G2 is a company that I had been close with for the last, since its inception. I remember partnering with G2 on several client engagements when I was at LinkedIn. I saw that there was definitely synergy between the two businesses. Um, so when an opportunity came up with G2 to lead the partnerships organization, it really kind of thinking about, G2 had a really solid foundation already for partners, but the, the the magic point for me was like, how do you take it to the next level, and like, how do you define the next level for partnerships at G2? It was a no brainer. It was like it was the next step in my career. I knew that I wanted, that a different view of how businesses grow and how businesses scale. So that's how I got here.
Amazing, amazing. It's such a cool story, and yeah, I love how it started, and like really cool kind of mission oriented themes throughout. Very cool to hear. And so, Bell, very traditional telecoms company. I imagine, especially in the B2B space, like I would be really interested to hear. And I had a similar journey, by the way. I started off in marketing at American Express, and then moved into sales later. And so I get that like feeling around sales, and like the kind of icky feeling around. And then once you start doing it, and you're like, oh, I'm really good at this. Like it's like it's a funny one. But tell me, like, what at the time at Bell, like, did you run into partners in your marketing role? Did Bell have partners? Like, what was the perception of partners? Like, it would be really interested to hear at a more traditional company like that.
Absolutely. And I would say, the core business of Bell was built with partners. So if you think about the Cisco's, the Avayas, back when we had Nortel, like several of these partners were were key to Bell's business. And when we think about telcos, in the B2B landscape, they want to be the overall solution provider. I think every business wants to be the solution provider. Um, but Bell's strong point is their infrastructure,
Yeah,
right? It's their connectivity, and everything else needs to ride on top of that connectivity. So the core value prop is that they have a super strong, reliable, robust um, connection,
mhm.
but they depend on partners for everything else that fits up on top of it. So channel partnership is core to growing their business. They had also started to put together professional services and managed service offerings. If you think about Bell in another way, it's a legacy telco company. They've got a lot of legacy telephone lines and connections that cost a lot of money to maintain. So as they start, and quite frankly, a lot of people are also moving away from those legacy landlines.
Yeah.
So
Well,
as you start, it's kind of a balancing act. You need to manage the decline of one side of your business while quickly growing and innovating and scaling up another side of your business. You can't build everything in house. You don't have the investment or the time to do that. But what you can do is partner with other technology companies to scale up that innovation with you so that you can manage the decline on the other side.
yeah, that's super interesting. And so, like, what was your team engaged with those channel partners, or like, how did you go to market with them? You kind of talked about how you touched on go to market there. Like, how did that work at that time?
Yeah, yeah, great question. My direct team was not. My team was the marketing communications team. However, we brought everything into market. So we will be working with the channel marketers um, to formulate what that value prop is, what that messaging looks like, and then fit it into our overall go to market strategy and fit it into those messaging. I will also say, just like B2B marketing has changed so much since I was
Mhm.
at Bell, and channel marketing has changed a lot too.
Yeah,
At that time, a lot of the channel marketing, activities were like events, lunch and learns, you know, and, and then it started getting into like webinars, and it's slowly turning into something very different. Like from what I'm seeing, from what I saw at LinkedIn, like you would have co-marketing campaigns, ad campaigns on LinkedIn, driving leads that would then be, shared across partners. I think those are all very different motions than what we saw before.
yeah, makes a ton of sense. And like, I think every partnerships person struggles to get on the agenda of the like marketing communications team. Like, if you were to put yourself back into your shoes back then, like, what advice would you have for people that are trying to get in front of marketing, like especially comms? Like where it's like, hey, it would it would probably drive a ton of goodwill or like accelerate value in the partnership if we were able to like do a press release or like do like some joint emails or whatever, not, and then the comms team are like, well, we've got our own plan, like we've already got our own priorities. Like, how would you recommend that someone navigate that if you were putting your marketing hat back on?
Yeah, I think step one is to really understand the core marketing plan and strategy, and then like understand where you fit in. I think the challenge that may have inhibited us in the past is a lot of times these channel partner marketers are co-funded by the channel partner.
Yeah.
And so, how they sit in the organization, how they're measured, their mandate, a lot of it comes from the channel partner versus, your home base versus like Bell. And so, at times there would be disconnects in where, let's say, a Cisco funded partner manager would come to the table with a Cisco ask, but that doesn't, they're not really understanding or articulating how it fits with the the Bell agenda, for lack of better words, right? What do we try to do, and where are missing pieces that make sense for partners to come in? So I think starting with just a homegrown understanding of your business, understanding of like your market objectives, and then coming into table with how partners complement will be, it'll kind of, reframe the ask versus coming in with just the partner perspective.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I absolutely love that. That's awesome. And then so you transitioned on into like a direct sales role at LinkedIn. And I think that uh owning your own business, you kind of talked about owning a number, and I like, ownership I think is key to partnerships success roles as well. I think for people that move into a partnerships role that haven't owned a number in the past, it's kind of a shock to the system. If you move into partnerships from sales and you've already owned a number in the past, it's less so. But maybe you could talk about how you kind of owned your number at LinkedIn, and then we could talk about kind of the analog of like, strategic accounts and owning them at LinkedIn, and how that kind of translates into what you talk with your team about at G2 with owning their numbers.
Yeah. Owning a number is, I mean, a number to me is just a high pressure goal, right? And having accountability over that high pressure goal. In sales, it's really easy because it shows up in your compensation. So there's kind of no wiggle room around it. Um, but I think how you get to own your number starts with deep understanding of your customer and really like knowing what their objectives are, where they're weak in, where they're strong in, and then working a way to solve, for those challenges that they have, helping them meet their objectives. That ultimately will get you to your number. I mean, the rest of it is math, right? You break down your number into where your sure bets are, where your exploring potential upsides are, and then also where your risk is. But starting with just really, really deeply understanding your customer will get you, a good chunk of the way, and then just refining it with your math.
Yeah. Yeah. And so how does that translate to your team at
Oh,
G2 at the moment? Like, how does that math work, I guess?
yeah. So one of the things that we've instituted just this quarter, and it's something that we will be repeating, is we have partner success managers on our team, and every partner success manager is coming up with a partner account plan, which kind of kicks off that whole process of really understanding, studying your partners and understanding what moves them, understanding where their strengths are, where they're weak in, and how we complement each other, right? This kind of goes back to my earlier statement around understand how your partners fit into the bigger mission of your company. Um, for our partner success managers starts with that planning process. It's going to be an iterative process, so we're going to get better and better as we go. But that's one way that we're translating it.
Yeah. It's also, I'd love to talk more about this just because we're kind of going through this process at Deal at the moment on our team where we're introducing more of like a planning cadence and also like trying to set a standard of what good partner planning looks like. And, like, okay, we need to do a QBR, but like, do we know how to do a QBR and will it actually be valuable to the partner, or are we just going to take up a bunch of our time and their time? And,
Right.
so I'd love to hear a little bit about how you kind of introduced the concept, if you did, or like, and like, what are the things that are priority in that to ensure that these are like things that are actually going to drive value for the partners and for the company, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. There are a few different layers on this. So I'll start
Yeah.
with kind of what how we're thinking strategically about the planning rhythm and process at G2. I think um, historically it's we've been on a rocket ship. Like the company has scaled massively in the last few years, and so we I think all recognize that we need to have a more streamlined and aligned way to put together our plans, articulate our big bets, and have the organization and our partners, all like beating to the rhythm of the same drum. So it starts with just having our revenue leader, our CRO, our marketing team, and our sales enablement and myself get in a room together to think about what is our revenue goals for the next year or 2 years or 3 years, however long you want to project out. And in order to achieve those goals, what are the major tempos, the big bets that we're all going to be focused on, right? It should just be a couple throughout the year. And then followed by that, what are all the campaigns and offers and activities that's going to get us to those big tent poles? And where is the role for partners? I think
Uh-huh.
once we have that vision and we're able to articulate it to our team, then the next step becomes how are they working with their partners to get there? And it starts with understanding their partners and understanding their role and understanding their strengths and weaknesses in reference to the larger tent poles that we're trying to go to. It's kind of it's been a learning lesson for me. Learning lesson. It's been a learning journey for me for the last 7-8 months here. Is we want to create this ownership of strategy and plan with your partner. And
Uh-huh.
so I think when I first started, it was like, well, what do you want to do? What do you want? Where do you think we should go? Right.
Yeah,
Um, and what I realized is that's really not fair to ask your team that if you can't articulate where the business is going. They
sure.
don't know where you're going, where the business is going. Then it's just becoming like it's just throw paint on the wall and see what sticks.
Yeah,
And that's not really how we would run a, a good business.
yeah, yeah. No, I love that. I think I've done a lot of like management coaching type training like through my career, and there's so much of that, like ask open-ended questions and like what do you think we should do? Da-da-da. And I think that there's like, as an IC, there's nothing more frustrating than having someone who like doesn't have an opinion that you're reporting to. Like ultimately, like if you're just a people manager, then it's one thing, right? Like I talked to someone else about this, like the difference between a manager and a leader, and like how if you're just a people manager, and you're just coaching, then 100% like that is the right approach to just like, hey, how are you going to approach this? And like almost like a therapist, right? You're just like, you're not trying to take an active role in their work. You're just trying to like help them through it. But if you're a leader, like you really have to put like a stake in the ground, like a flag in the ground, or like whatever, and say, hey, like we're going to make a bet that this is the thing that's going to work. And you kind of have to like take some of that responsibility with the person on your team and like own it with them. So I really like that, like that learning. And I had someone else on the show not too long ago that shared something similar as like a realization that was like, I thought that success, like being a good boss looked like this. And actually it was like having skin in the game with the person and saying, we're both going to make this cool together, basically.
Yeah, yeah. I like that reference around just the frustration and IC feels. And when if they don't know, and I mean it's basically like you're making them suffer by
Yeah.
asking them all these questions that they just don't know the answer to yet. So it's a balance of empowerment, but as well as leading with a vision.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe a better question to ask is like, hey, how can we find out like what the right, like rather than what do you think? Like, hey, how can we find out the right answer to this? No, I love it. So you're in your first year of a VP role, like, and looks like you kind of went from VP of partnerships to even more responsibility within the bit. Well, like within the first year. So like a lot going on for you. I'd love to hear two things before we wrap up. So one is just like, what does the first year in role as a VP of partnerships look like, especially at a company like G2? And then I would love to hear like specifically, what are the expectations of you as a VP of partnerships, and now like even more than that at G2 as well. So like two questions, both of them are fairly big. I think like you're smart enough to figure out how to pull them together better than I am. But I'd love to hear those before we wrap up.
Yeah, yeah, and you pull me back if I'm going off like into a different planet here. So I think think my first year as the VP of partnerships at G2 has just been figuring out what the next role for partnerships is. I think like many organizations, G2 started partnerships on with tech partnerships. That's kind of been the core. And when I came in, it was reimagining, what else could we do here that has material impact in our business, our go-to-market motions, and more specifically, like our valuation and the value that we're able to deliver to customers in market. Um, I think that quickly spun into a few different parts. We will continue to double down in our tech partnerships to make sure that our products are sticky and robust, and has uh, that solution orientated objective than versus a very specific widget. Uh, but more than that, we're starting to think about the role of service partners, because we know that we cannot do it all. Our
Yeah.
tech partners cannot solve it all. Somebody needs to actually implement and do the work. And so we're starting to create a new, we're just exploring a new type of partnership with agencies and service providers. The another area that I think I think my role has kind of grown into is figuring out, how do we have a robust enablement motion that goes beyond just enabling our internal sales teams, because of the role that partners are starting to play, whether in service function or in a channel function. Um, there's so much potential for us to grow and scale our business if we're able to equip our partners with the right tools, with the right messaging, with the right enablement pieces to be successful, to be successful jointly in market. So we've expanded the sales enablement team to be revenue enablement.
Uh-huh.
And then there's another part of the team that I don't think I talked about, which is our solution consultants. And this is like a brilliant team of uh, data analysts and consultants who advise customers on how to maximize their ROI with us through integration partners, through different measurement methodologies. Um, and so they're bringing them into the fold and working really closely with our integration partners, with our enablement teams, to bring the whole message alive to our customers and bring that experience to fruition. Uh, so I think my year one has been figuring out how do we tie all the different pieces together so that the role and the vision of partnerships in G2's growth makes sense, and that we're actually able um, to activate everything.
Yeah, I love that. And so tell me a little bit about the expectation of the partner, or like if you can share like the metrics, the from a partnerships perspective specifically, and then also like just like the role that G2 is looking for partnerships to play in the organization. Like, is this really a revenue thing, or is it like a like a product thing as well? Like, really interested to hear like how that spans, and then like even like we could talk about your peers and how you engage with them as well at the VP level. I think that's very interesting for folks.
Yeah. So in the G2 world, my team sits underneath the revenue organization.
Uh-huh.
And so, partner source, partner influence revenue will intrinsically be part of our measurement and what we care about. But our mission goes so much broader than that. And quite honestly, in order to get partner influence and partner source revenue, you need to care about the customer experience. You need to care about the product value. Um, and so for us, our mission is to empower every seller on G2 with a sticky, value driven G2 experience and then to grow our revenue through this ecosystem of partners and subject matter experts that we have in house. Um, so that's our mission, and kind of where we how we think about measurement. Um, Another core measurement for us is adoption. So we have what we call monthly active integrations, and through that we're able to see how many who has what integration turned on.
Yeah.
We know that having an integration turned on increases our retention rate drastically. We know it has a heavy impact on that. So so much so that that metric is actually built into our CSM adoption scores, and that's something that they look at every day. Um, so does that help kind of give you an idea around what we track without actually telling you what our
Yeah,
number is?
yeah, yeah, yeah. It does. It does. Thank you. And like when you joined, was it like, hey, things are going well and we want to do more of it, or was it like, hey, we need to like 10x what we're doing right now on those metrics in order to like really be successful?
It was definitely the former.
Uh-huh.
Like partnerships at G2 has been, I think, Ashley Taylor on my team put it the best way. She's like, we're kind of like a folklore where everyone has heard of partnerships. They think they know what they do, but they don't. And it's a it's been mystified. Um, so I think there's deep love for the partnerships team at G2 even before I joined, and there was no intention of doing something radically different. But when we look at the business, when we look at our aspirations, where we want to grow to, our mission, and we also think about the macroeconomic conditions. There was opportunities that I wanted to make sure that we hit like pretty pretty early, and not let those opportunities just kind of drift by.
Awesome. Yeah, and definitely shout out to Ashley, one of my favorite people in partnerships. It sounds like you're a big fan of hers. I think we'd have to battle for who's her number one fan. I'm a very big fan of hers. So that's very cool to hear her. And hopefully she hears this and knows how we appreciate her. So yeah, tell me how is it, because it sounds like what the classic thing of everyone's like, oh, we love our partnerships team, we know that they're good, doing good work. What do they actually do? Not really sure. So how, like, who are your peers at the VP level that you're engaging with, and like how are you like how are you interacting with them in order to kind of remedy some of that?
Yeah, I think G2 has a unique culture in where our senior leadership team is very hands-on, and it's great. They can fly, at 3,000 level, and they can dive right into like 10 mile level and really get into the weeds, which, I would say is different from any other organization I've been part of. Um, but it's like I work very closely with our VP of product. There's a lot of times in where I will bug her and be like, "Hey, can you just take a look over this? I don't think I actually have an ask, but like I may be underestimating where there's something that I may be overlooking. So take a look and let me know if you flag anything." And likewise, she'll send me things about processes that may have an impact, may not, and we'll just kind of riff with each other about these things. Um, Similarly, on the marketing side, we have a partner marketer, who used to be a partner manager, uh, and she is very, very well versed in the space. So she is a definite thought partner for my team, for myself. And then, of course, there's, we have a head of product marketing, and brand who I also work closely with. Um, I think the other set of partners, or internal partners for me, are our sales leaders, because it's you're you're not going to get far without the sales leaders bought in, and especially when we talk about tech partners who are complementary in many ways, but can sometimes show up in market as competition, because at the end of the day, marketers have a finite amount of budget, and there are going to be cases in where they're going to choose one or the other, no matter how well we work together. Uh, so ensuring that that our sales leadership team sees our partners as complementary versus as somewhere where they need to be territorial about.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And it's such a fine balance. Like the competing for budget and mind share, or, like working together as like a best of breed solution. And it can really work, and it can really go wrong. Yeah, I love that. We're coming to the end of our time together, unfortunately, which is very sad, because it's been an awesome conversation. I'd love to hear from you something that we ask everyone that joins the show, which is, what's something that you've learned recently that you would like to share with the other people that are listening?
Yeah, I think it's really something that I'm relearning. um, so I remember when I joined LinkedIn, I it was there was a lot of I would say energy around conscious leadership, and more specifically, a book on conscious leadership by Fred Kaufman, and
Well,
this whole notion around clean agreement and like strong collaboration, having two confirmed yeses before you move on, and how to have conversations with people to hold them accountable when deadlines are missed. Um, it's actually I find myself more and more these days revisiting those chapters, rewatching like those LinkedIn learning videos, because the role of partnership is it's in the gray. You're in the middle of intersections with so many different cross-functional partners, and it can be a very I think ambiguous area, um, and challenging for collaboration if you don't stick to those foundations.
yeah,
So I actually find myself, whereas in sales, you can get away a little bit, not for too long, but you can get away with being a lone wolf for a little bit. I think in partnerships that absolutely will not fly, and so I find myself revisiting those chapters around how to be the best collaborative partner I can be, and just learning about communication styles and refreshing the clean agreements and understanding those alignments.
amazing. Absolutely love it. And I'll pick up a copy of the book. I'm going. I've almost finished this extremely long fantasy series, and I'm ready for some nonfiction books again. And so maybe that's something I can pick up in the new year. But I appreciate the time, Christine. Thank you so much. Super interesting to kind of get the insight of someone who's been in marketing, been in sales, now leading partnerships. Also, I think like we could have spent a whole hour just talking about like the services and the partnerships, but maybe another time.
Oh,
I really appreciate you taking the time, and I know that everyone else is going to really enjoy listening to this too. So thank you.
thank you for having me on, Ty.